because there's a fascinating new poll out this weekend showing that, well, a majority of Labour voters now think that the biggest burden on the NHS is mass immigration. This is something of a sea change in public opinion, isn't it?
I don't think so. I think for a long time the British public have been very clear that when you grow your population artificially through the mass migration agenda that we've seen of the last decade or so, and you don't make the appropriate investment in the British workforce, then you are going to end up with problems. You know, we're constantly told that without immigration, the NHS would be on its knees. But last year, of the 850,000 visas we awarded, about 1% actually went to medical practitioners. So there's a clear discrepancy there between the pressures being put on it and actually how much immigration is actually alleviating the problem. I think we also need to recognise it's a self-imposed wound as well, in that we place a ridiculous cap of very few thousand places on British medical students hoping to go into the profession, which is something that needs to be completely removed. As well.
That is one of the biggest frustrations we have, and also again the limitation on funding for nurses as well, when they have to work for free in hospitals and therefore and units, so they don't actually get a chance to earn the money to help them through their degree. But the doctors limit, we have genuinely got, I think about there's another like 3,000 students who've got straight A's in all the right subjects at A level who could be going into a medical school, but we go, oh no, it's cheaper to import them from any other country rather than pay $250,000 to train them up here when they're actually more likely to stay here and might usefully do things like, you know, speak the language fluently. Probably come down quite a lot for a lot of people who are being treated in hospital.
Yeah, and you look at what actually happens. We don't train British people. We have to rely on individuals from countries on the WHO red list who have lower training standards, and I think that's probably why we see that foreign-born doctors are twice as likely to referred to the General Medical Council. In 2016, 3/4 of those that were struck off as doctors were from foreign-born nationalities as well. So there's a clear problem here, and you know, I'd rather take someone that perhaps had fallen slightly short of their A-level required grade, but were at least being trained in a British university, than someone from an unknown university in Nigeria or Zimbabwe. I think it's pretty much a common sense position.
No, indeed, and in India, again, I remember this is a Reuters report from a few years back that 1 in 4 doctors, qualified supposedly doctors working in India, and we have an awful lot of doctors coming over from India, have no medical qualification at all, but they're working as doctors in India, and we're obviously importing people here. There are some big remarks. People might have a piece of paper saying they are, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are. But I mean, that's, I thought was, you know, it was really interesting that it was Labour voters, people who voted for Keir Starmer last July, who were saying that they think this is a problem. A real, understanding that, you know, a lot of the things we've been told, you know, economic benefits and all of that, and the social cohesion and all that, that actually that stuff is flying out of the window now. Of course, there's been more and more concern, has there not, quite rightly, over migrants who come Channel migrants arriving. We had more than 1,000 arrive on Friday and Saturday between them. More again with more calm weather we're going to get this week, we're expecting. But again and again, we're having migrants who are granted, they finally go through the asylum process. They are told they haven't got asylum. They lose their appeal. I mean, most of them, it seems to me, win their appeals, and because they've, I don't know, got a bad headache that day, or they met a girl once in a pub in Liverpool and they've got the right to stay in the country because they're family links or something. But again and again, we've got migrants being kept in hotels at taxpayers' expense, free to walk around, even though they've lost their claim for asylum.
The whole claim process now, which it takes an individual to undergo to claim asylum, is ridiculous. It's so much more straightforward if we actually got back to the Tory position, which was if an individual arrives in this country illegally on a small boat, then they automatically are not eligible to claim asylum in this country. You look at the tribunal system, which is frankly stuffed to the rafters with left-wing activists approving individuals that have maybe been rejected by the Home Office. I don't know why we have a tribunal system. It should ultimately be the decision of democratically elected politicians as to who or who leaves the country. And this is part of the reason why we are seeing such a backlog. Labour seem to be doing all they can to make the hotel situation worse. Of course, extending the period an individual can stay in hotels after having a successful application, and then also extending legal aid and increasing legal aid so that we can really sort of throw flies in the ointment, and you have sort of crafty lawyers doing all they can to make sure their individual isn't actually removed as well.
And once the person's been in the country after a certain period of time, basically we know they're never going to be got out of the country. They're going to be here forever. We're stuck with them, and we've seen, haven't we, the crime statistics. We've seen again and again, and councils and now getting, the public body's getting very wary of giving us information about who's responsible for crimes. We're going to start getting that data. I think they've had to give in and allow us some of that data. But we have a serious issue with particularly illegal migrant, but migrant crime in this country from specific countries, the young men of those countries who don't share a lot of our values, who are coming over here and are not going, oh, well, I'm finally here in the land of plenty, let me contribute. They're doing the exact opposite. It's a reality check everyone has to wake up to.
Precisely, and I think the Casey report shone a light on that. I think it was an establishment enough figure that was actually talking about this, that perhaps politicians finally have to.
No, a lefty baroness said it, so it suddenly became true.
Well, exactly, but whereas the statistics that perhaps you and I have been talking about previously as well, which shows, things such as a third of sexual assaults last year were committed by foreign nationals, those really don't get much pick up by the BBC or politicians at all. And, it's an uncomfortable conversation that they just don't want to have.
No, exactly. And again, facts aren't bigoted. They're just facts. Really good to get you on. Robert Bates, Research Director at the Centre for Migration.